So to start painting some grass and hills in the foreground, I've mixed some colors. With anything that's plants, I start with a set of 3 colors. I've mixed one that I'm just going to call true green because it's the truest green that I can mix, not because it's literally the truest green. It's just that it's pure blue and yellow with no black or white in it. The bright color is yellower and whiter because it's a mix of the green with what I'm going to call my light source, which would be the sun that has a yellowish hue to it. So wherever the sunlight hits the green, it's going to make it not only brighter but also yellower. So this is a brighter yellower green that's going to represent the brightest areas of my color set when I'm painting this grass. The third color is the shadow color, which is just a mix of black and blue, because I want all of my shadows to have a bluish hue because there's a big blue sky over everything causing an indirect blue light. That's grass right there, okay? That's grass unaltered. We're not bothering with messing with shadows and light. Obviously that does not look right. So let's put some shadows on it. I'm going to make a hill coming down here. So I'm going to need some shadows at the base of that hill. Add the shadow color. Very, very green. Okay, that is a lot of bright green. That's why it's going to be important to incorporate the other colors. The true green is only going to be a very small amount of this. So once I get a shadow established here, I'm going to put some of my shadow color on. And I want to try to get to this while it's still wet. So I have my bucket of water handy and I'm going to keep brushing some water onto the wall. Okay, then let's take the highlight color. I'm going to get this big 2.5 inch brush and I'm going to dip it in this water. Now this is an important part right here. We're going to put it in that bucket, get it nice and wet, and then I'm going to spin it out. Just make sure you have it nice and straight up and down before you do this because it flicks water and paint everywhere. Okay, now I want you to see what it does to the end of the brush. See how it does that? This is going to be my grass blades right here. My paint is pretty watered down, this highlight color. This is my brightest color. And you can see I just barely dipped the tip. Look how little I dipped it. You can still see all of that texture on there. It's just barely on the end. So when I come up here on this wet paint, I'm going to just start doing these little strokes across the top of this. You can quickly overdo this and lose the streakiness. So you want to do it and then leave it after. The more you do it, the more it blends the colors. My paint is already starting to dry down in here, so I'll probably have to come back and do some overlap. The truth is I can probably just stay in this brush and use it for all the colors. Let's try it. Let's put some shadow color. Let's put some true green color. Now you'll find that the more you use this brush, the more caked with paint it gets, and you'll lose the real fine streakiness as that happens. These tips are starting to get glued together with paint, and I'll just need to rinse it and respin it so that it maintains that. I mean, I can get rid of a lot of paint doing this, but that only works so much. You don't want to spin it a lot when there's paint in there. So I'll get the highlight color, do more of this. So the trick is having the brush in that condition with those little tips just flared out. So I'm going to go along like this. Now it's also important to understand the structure of the hill that I'm painting. So I'm going to rinse this out, get it back the way it was, and then go back to my other brush. So now a hill is going to be brighter on the top. Not so much because it's more directly facing. I mean, if it was a real steep hill, it would be because the light was directly hitting the top, not as much the edges. But something happens with a texture like grass, whereas it gets closer to you, you see deeper down in between the grass blades at the shadows. So what gets further from you is at a sharper angle, flatter angle, like the top of the hill, where it crests over. All you're seeing is the top of the grass blades, which are the part getting lit the most by the sun. So the effect is having a brighter area as grass gets further away or as it rounds a hill. So let's keep that in mind as we're doing this. I'm going to make the top of a hill, and I'm going to make sure that I have a lot less of the shadow color as I get near the top of the hill. So let's say, I'm going to have to paint over some of this, but let's say that this top of my hill is going to be about yay high. You can't do too much at a time. You know, I need to be careful to limit the amount of area I'm covering at once, because the paint will dry real fast on you. The advantage to it drying fast is you can just keep going over it with new stuff, you know, without having to wait. Okay, I'm doing that same technique I showed you. I dipped it a little bit too deep in the paint so you can see the streaks are fatter, but that's going to be okay for this hill. So what you don't want is for the highlight to just follow the shape of each hill. You know, you want to have at the top of the hill, your highlight area is going to be larger. You want the shadow area to be more level in between these hills. Okay, so I'm not just going to go bright around. See how I'm going level here? The hill's like this, but I'm doing my boundary of brighter grass is level, because I want this hill to look like a three-dimensional rounded object. If I just make lines like this, it has a way of looking cartoony and unnatural. Okay, I don't want to overdo this too much because I'll start losing my texture. See, I'm bringing that grass kind of across a level area. Not perfect. You see it goes up and down and up and down. Every time I do a shadow or a highlight, I always am asking myself, what is the boundary area for that shadow or that highlight? Because that boundary area is what will suggest the shape of a thing, of an object. Let's go like this. Okay, so now I'm getting down lower in here. This is where it's probably good. I can go upward too. You might get a little bit different look. Blend things out. Now we'll say, what if it's far away? We've identified the color system. We've got shadow color, we've got true color, and highlight color. Now let's just add sky color to all of those as we do further hills. So you can see down here with my colors, I've got sky color, the same exact color I used in my sky. And all I'm going to do is the exact same thing I did with that foreground hill, but over the top of some sky color. See, I'll just bring this down, and I'm just going to paint some of my grassy hill right over that blue. So let's put, what do we have? We need a little bit of the shadow, right? Put a little bit of the shadow in here. Only a little bit of the shadow showing where the hill is, because we want level lines when it comes to the light and shadow. And you might switch to a smaller brush when you get to things further away so that you can get smaller texture. Now a little bit of the true color. Back to the big brush that I use for the highlight color. Having a system of working more with primaries and mixing your own colors, you end up having your colors, you need your colors to mix, and you kind of get two things done at the same time. You'll feel the paint dry and start to get tacky. It won't work as good. When it gets tacky, sometimes you just have to move slower because the paint will still move, but just not as quickly. But don't panic. You can always just paint back over it again. See how I'm leaving a lot less of this shadow color up near the top of the hill? Because I don't want rainbows of color. That doesn't create depth. Actually, it does just the opposite. It flattens the picture out. So I could do another distant hill here where I do mostly just highlight color. Like maybe in the further distance, it's almost solid bright green. This is my highlight color. And then rather than doing my dark color and coming over it with highlight, I'll do my highlight and just come back into it with my shadow colors and blue sky color because it's distant. So there's my sky color. Now I'll just do a little bit, tiny bit of shadow color and a tiny bit of the green. Same thing as the front, just in tiny amounts. See how I'm just laying the brush down and just going over this. I'll keep working it so that it blends in nice and soft. If I have excess paint on my brush, if I got more than I want, I can just get rid of it down here in the wall. Get this real fine texture. Now when I was mixing these greens, I always have to be sure that I mix the green. You want your bright green to still be a little darker than the sky. It makes the sky look kind of dark and stormy if the highlights on your grass are lighter in hue. Like if you converted the whole thing to black and white and the highlights on the grass were lighter in shade than the sky, and it makes your sky look too stormy, so don't do that. Make sure your brightest colors on your grass are still a little darker than the sky. Go back to this brush. I'm constantly dipping in that water bucket. Constantly. Like every other time when I'm working on larger surface area, because the truth is the paint just dries so fast it is difficult to move quick enough. So you just have to practice always dipping in the water bucket every time you put paint on. If you just make a habit out of just every other dip in the bucket, you know. Okay, my highlight color. Got too much on there. See, I just get it down below the picture here and I can reuse it. So maybe I'll do it kind of patchy on this. See, I won't do it equal. Leave some areas more than others. Make it look a little more wild. Okay, so the same thing, I'll overlap hills. So to do that, I'll do the exact same thing I did, but where this hill will come up and kind of cover the middle part and the edges will show more. And each time you do an overlap, you know, you want to get your colors bolder, the shadows darker, and, you know, less and less sky color of it as you get closer and closer. So I'm just going to do an example real quick of overlapping these colors. Get plenty of this green. I'm going to get a lot of it so it dries slower. If you put the paint on heavy, it definitely dries slower for you. And this is a real close hill, so I want a lot of this true green in it. This will be my closest hill. See how much of the green I'm putting on? Just load it on there. And then I'll grab the shadow color and at the base, notice how my area is wider. This one, the area was only like that much of the true green. This one, it's this much. If I were to do another one closer, I'd go even more. Again, this shadow area, just generally the boundary of it is kind of level. Put a lot of that shadow in there. Nice dark shadows. Relatively speaking, grass is pretty dark in comparison with other objects in a picture. That is where it's up close. more of that true green. Okay, then let's get my little texture brush. My paint doesn't have quite enough water in it, so I'll throw some water in there. If you have thinner paint and you add more water to it, then it does a lot better with the fine little streaks. Okay, so now we're putting the highlight color in here. Grass can be a hard thing, you know, but the trick for me is just having the right tools. And this brush has been a big help to me when doing a texture like this. Having this big brush with the flared out ends and being able to just rinse it out and get it back to how it was when it gets filled up with paint. That's been very key in getting this. See, I'll just use it to blend these colors that are already on here. Already this paint is drying, so I'm just going to come across, blend it together. Okay, we'll leave that alone for a little bit, and I'll come up here and do one last hill in the back. There's my true green. And when I do this last hill, I'm not going to do any of the texture brush. The most distant hills are just going to be solid gradients of color. No grass blade texture. You don't see grass blades this far away. So all I'm going to do is apply the highlight color at the top. You saw me put the true green on there. I need hardly any of the shadow. There's already some of that shadow in my brush. Just the thinnest little strip here. It's amazing what one thin little strip of color can do for the perspective of a painting. And I'm just going to blend out my, you can see a lot of horizontal brush strokes. Just going to try to get it solid. Just soft blends the whole way. The kind of the final touch on it can be this pure highlight color, and I could just find where the top of the hill is. And it's not making any individual grass blades, it's just this little vertical touch with the brush, with the pure highlight color. And that just creates perspective of that hill disappearing, or maybe just brighter spots in the grass. With a lighter touch, you can get a little bit of texture in there too. You can just kind of go across the tops and do these. You don't want to overdo that though. I'll just do it as it gets, just these further ones, just making these horizontal strips of that brightest color. See that super bright? It was the brightest green I could mix. Yellow, blue, and white. Just like that. Okay, that's all I wanted to show. Now that I've got my background hills done, it's time to start bringing the perspective forward. I'll show you a couple techniques for doing grass that's right up close to you. The first, I've covered this area with the shadow color and the green just mixed together, so I've just got myself a nice deep blue-green shadow. A lot of the, it's just the shadow color and some of the greens in there. I'll take this brush that I've been doing all of this top texture with. Here, instead of doing the real streaky lines of the wet on wet, I'll use the same brush, all feathered out like I did. See how I've got the top all flared out? And I'll get, this time I'm going to use the true green color, and I'm going to add a little bit of water to it so that it's not too thin. Or I mean not too sticky. I'm thinning it out. Okay, so this is just a real light technique. You want a nice soft touch with it. Just barely on the tip of the brush. Just like I did before. So here, it's coming so close that you're looking down in it and you're just seeing the tips of the grass blades coming out of the shadows. So I'm going to just start doing, this is more of dabbing and making little dots on the wall. I'm still doing a slight downward movement, but where this look transitions into the more solid bright green, it's going to create a very rounded perspective of a hill coming toward you. Like you're looking down into the grass. I'm going to do this again with the highlight color. See, I'm just dabbing this over. Get a little bit more. Trying the brush different ways, you know, whatever. Brushes are different, so I'll end up just holding it whatever way seems to work the best for the moment. See, it's very dotted. Not nearly as much of the streaking. Okay, now I've got some of the green, so now I'll go back over it again. And look how it gets less and less as I go down. Less and less. I'm going to end up just covering this with dirt or something else as it gets down lower. Now the highlight color, same thing. Maybe this has some heads of wheat or just the seeds of the grass on it, and it would leave the lighter colored little heads on the top of the grass. So if I just do this very slight downward motion across the top, it makes the look of that. And I want it to get more and more concentrated as it gets up here. I'm gonna get a little water in my brush because it's drying out as quick as I'm putting it on. I'll even go up onto the grass that I've already done. Some of the closer stuff probably look pretty good with some of that same texture over it. Just dots. And because of the shape of the bristles, as I dab it, the bristles kind of bend downward and leave a vertical shape on there anyway, so it's like the tips of little grass blades. Do a little bit more, then I'll show you another technique for doing really close grass. You're gonna like this. This will be fun. Shadow color, green, true color, bright highlight color, okay, then a detail brush. Actually, we'll start with this brush. Let's start going like this. Okay, just downward strokes, maybe upward strokes, maybe like this too. Okay, I could use a detail brush too. If I want to get real detailed, put little blades in here, dip my brush in the paint. So I'll use this when I'm just doing kind of speedy work, just doing little bits of grass in the foreground. Shadow color. Green. Okay. And start making the grass blades. This time I'm going up. It's just catching the very tip of this brush, just that little point right there. That's what's making the lines. You get this layered look. And I'll show you something fun. This is where it gets into paint and dirt, which is going to be in the next section. But I have my black and my green, so you're going to love the way you make dirt. You're going to love this. All you do, if you've already got green on there, just add some red, bright red. Watch what happens, how it makes this brown. Just going to fade it up into this green color. Alright. Then get some white. Fade it up in there. If I want more brown color to it, just add more red and green. Let's see, I'll go with my bright green. So it makes that kind of mauve color to it. Like that. See, and then maybe you have like, maybe just kind of make some of these grass blades coming up and blending in with this. I'm sure we could find a more detailed, intensive way of doing foreground grass, but I just especially enjoy this method. Probably stay away from using that highlight color on that base because I'm going to add highlights to it, and I just don't think that looks that great. So I'm going to go over that. Then I just want to show you how you can add some highlight colors into this grass to make it look really... How about some black? You want to use more black near the base in the shadows. See? I'm putting it in there. As long as you have this look of a lot of overlapping vertical lines, then that's good. This is the base, and then the highlights is where it really starts to look like real grass. It's cool because the red mixing with that green creates this shadow color. Like if I put red in there, the red mixing with that deep green creates a real nice shadow color for this grass. And then that transitions into this lighter color that I have so that it looks like the shadows at the base of some plants. See, and I'm just very loosely doing these horizontal lines. Okay, then we'll just do some bright highlights. So we'll get the highlight color, and wherever I see a grass blade, you see I see one coming down here, so I'm just going to grab that, just shoom, like that, and then I'm going to look for others that I can do that same thing. If I see one right here, I'll just make that curve down. See some up in here, see some up in here. And when you just start a grass blade from the middle and just kind of taper it down, it's like one that's curled over, you know. Maybe we'll use that. We'll see if this true green color will work too. Get the bright color. If you wait for this to dry, you can get sharper edges. I was just in too much of a hurry. Do some curly ones. I like curly grass. Bright color. And kind of kink a little bit, that's cool too. Because I started with my black and colors, mixed them all together, I had this gray base. That gray looks like depth of texture, you know, where a lot's going on, it just looks like a gray, and it makes it deep. So a way of making this grass pop out, it's because it has all the grayish greens in the middle, and then the vivid colors are the sharp little details that are coming out towards the front. See, so I can do as much as I want in that way, but that's it, that's the technique. I might just paint over this with something else. I just wanted to show you how it works. This little brush has like a razor blade edge, and it just cuts right through this wet paint. It's cool how you just make grass blades like that. If you do too much, you'll ruin it though. To fade this in, let's use the same technique where I'm just taking this little brush. I'm going to do the tips of grass blades. I'm going to grab the true green, then the highlight back and forth, and I want to create a top layer on here of the brighter colors, because that's what makes grass look like grass, is that, you know, it has that depth to it where the top catches the light more. So let's make some grass just using this brush. Alright, then let's get some of the highlight color. And we're just going to get higher and higher, just layering these brighter colors. And then I'll switch to the bigger brush and do more of a broader technique with it. So let's take this true green. I'm keeping it real wet and trying to make fatter lines now on this, because I'm trying to blend it with this grass that I just did. You see how I've got more water in it, so these are more glued together with the paint, so I get fatter lines when I do that. Alright, let's get the bright color. Let's do the, I think I might have too much on there. The trick is just getting the right size on these to make a smooth transition. Then we'll just blend it up into here. Let's get that little detail brush some more. You want to minimize the amount that you use a brush this tiny for. I mean, you could just, Mural takes forever. When you use little brushes, you know, it can really prolong the time. Let's do some shadows in here too. I'll use the black and the true green to do some shadows coming out of this. A little bit of black in here. So these techniques, obviously, you know, you want to do them limit if you're doing a picture. I guess, you know, it'd be awesome if you painted a whole mural with this level of detail. It just takes forever. That's all I'm saying is I typically resort to all the speed techniques and just save this stuff for the foreground where I have the more important things. Just little bits of accent, you know. And if you do a whole picture like that, there's no such thing as an accent anymore because the whole picture is accents. So it's good to save your sharpest detail for just a few objects in the front. Okay, I got plenty of grass on my picture, so now I'm thinking it probably needs a little bit of dirt. So let's do that next.